So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of day, everyone. Thank you for joining and staying with us. The largest, the fastest growing, and the most active um, global community and meetup for lean product development, business agility, product centricity, aka organizational design, large scale Scrum. That's a long name, right? Very loaded. Today we have a very special guest. Christopher Morales, who was born and raised in the United States, as far as I know, but now lives by way of Germany. Chris has a very robust career that spans over multiple decades. He has honed his expertise in digital strategy and agile leadership, working with notable organizations such as Business Agility Institute, ESPN, IBM, as well as a few others. Chris is a dedicated and adaptive leader. Is passionate about guiding teams to make informed and sustainable decisions in a quickly evolving landscape. He is also the founder of Electric Media LLC that he champions himself, and this is an AI-driven project company that's aimed at empowering small to medium-sized businesses in the US and Europe. Outside of his professional endeavor, he enjoys engaging with new ideas and collaborating with forward-thinking individuals to make complex technologies accessible and meaningful to diverse organizations. With that, I would like to pass the baton over to Chris. Chris, take it away. Everyone, please keep your mics off, your cameras on if you can, and let's roll with the punches.
All
Chris.
right. Thank you so much, Gene. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Happy Friday. I appreciate your time, and I will try to keep this nice and relaxed. My hope is that with our discussion will come some thought. So if you leave here thinking I will have achieved my goal, as Gene said, I am very proud of the work that I've done. I currently serve as the Director of Digital Initiatives with X2A, as well as being the founder of Electric Media, as Gene had mentioned. Before I really kind of get into the heart of the content, I'm kind of curious, and I kind of put this out rhetorically to many of you on the call, which is how many times have you tried to explain what's going on in AI, and you kind of go back to the dot-com bubble to kind of explain the level of disruption that we're experiencing. And I know I have been part of a lot of conversations where that has been what has been related to me. And I really do get it. I will date myself here because at that time when the dot-com bubble was bursting, I was really pursuing my degree in media. And so I wasn't paying attention to it the same way that I'm paying attention to what's going on now. And so what is described in that time period is a lot of what we're feeling now, which is some indecision and some insecurity about whether or not the bottom is going to fall out, and what are the long-term implications here. So I get and understand why that's the case, why that's the common comparison. And the reason why I'm chosen this topic is I actually feel like the better comparison to what we're experiencing right now has to do with what media started to endure and what it continues to endure. And that was about 20 years ago when we saw Web 2.0 starting to take hold and new media become digital media. And I got to experience this firsthand. I was working at ESPN at the time. I later was working in another terrestrial, or rather traditional media outlet at ABC Radio Networks, and even later in print with 1105 Media. And one of the things that was a big takeaway for me that I now reflect on is signs and signals, and how people reacted then and how people are reacting now. And that has proven to be really valuable for me as we're living through the current time with AI. So one of the things that I think is important to note, and this comes from some of my experience with the Business Agility Institute and some research we've done there, as well as anecdotal and just kind of living and breathing nowadays, which is when a technology is disruptive, the tendency is to follow the tools. And so when we think about ChatGPT and we think about AI's, generative AI's emergence in the marketplace, one of the first things that we're starting to see is people are chasing the tools, building LLMs, or trying to find a way to get the right tool into your hands, or what is the right tool I can create. My experience has shown that the better approach is actually to listen to the people. And that is something that I think speaks to me primarily because along with the many roles that I play, I'm an independent contractor. I, I look to do coaching with young people. I work with nonprofits. So when it comes to my skill set and my level of expertise, there are areas that I feel that anxiety and that angst that people talk about as it pertains to am I going to be eliminated? Is there going to be a value for me? Is AI going to replace my position? I understand that. Um, my experience has shown me that the answer is yes, and I think that we can we can bet on that, and we should bet on that rather. So let me take a couple steps back and kind of walk you through my own personal experience. So I started my professional career at ESPN. And in the early 2000s, ESPN was still the center of the sports production world. And I mean, when you think about the confidence and the energy that comes from walking those hallways, the knowing who the audience is, knowing what your product is, knowing what a great day looks like, it's you're vibrating at a level that is remarkable. And for everything that I will say about ESPN in my presentation, I'm super grateful for my time there. I was there long enough to win an Emmy Award and experience that. Unfortunately, for our talk, I learned some really, really interesting lessons about the media and the impact of disruption while I was walking those hallways. So while at ESPN, I got to experience a phenomenon that I don't know how many people remember. ESPN the phone. I don't think that was the real name of it, but that's what we called it in the hallways. And what ESPN the phone was it was like a response a to an emerging media landscape, an emerging opportunity, but it was very ill thought. And when we think about chasing the tools, following the tools versus listening to the people, this is one of the very first examples that I can remember of actually experiencing it, because of all of the people that were on the floor producing Sports Center, producing the core product, the idea of producing a phone strictly so that the audience would have the ability to get updates and alerts was not something that was floated generally to us as the core production team. And I think it was a huge mistake. And I think we see similarities today when we think about AI and how AI is impacting production and AI is being implemented. And when you think about what might have caused that decision, right? Early streaming numbers, early um, viewership on the web, for instance, were really low. And so the idea, the logic was we will use technology to bring people to where we want them to be. We'll bring them to the TVs and the cable subscriptions that we know are generating money for us. And the missed opportunity and the consequence of that thinking of utilizing the tools, or rather utilizing the technology in one way versus understanding what the technology was actually indicating, were significant. What that moment needed was someone to be able to recognize that the landscape wasn't just changing temporarily. The landscape was changing full on change in landscape, right? Um, and so the opportunity lost was the ability to build an infrastructure for a streaming platform. And the consequence is ESPN in 2026 continues to pay billions of dollars to acquire streaming rights, and even had to pay for the foundational technology that it uses to stream its media. So the big takeaway is small audiences tell us a lot. Small numbers can tell us a lot about where we're going and where we can proceed. Another example that I think is vivid in my mind is my time with ABC Radio Networks. And I can bring you into a boardroom that I sat in with the vice president, and we were doing a sales call, and we were talking about numbers, listenership and ad numbers, ad revenue numbers. And I watched as a chart was displayed in front of me where digital presence, digital audience was rising and traditional audience was decreasing. And while they weren't intersecting, you could clearly see projections indicated that an intersection point was going to occur. The clear signal, again, clear opportunity, again. But rather than listen to the small amount of audience that was giving the clear signal to the people in that boardroom, what happened was the signals were not necessarily ignored. They were just translated into numbers and logic that the experts in the room could understand. And what that meant was the people that needed to be thinking outside of the box were spending too much time evaluating old numbers and old ways of thinking and preventing themselves from identifying new opportunities and new ways of thinking about their audience. Years later, you'll see Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other independent podcasters fill up all this potential economy that was available right there for the radio industry. They eventually did make inroads, right? It wasn't for a lack of truly understanding. It was the approach. iHeartMedia ended up becoming a huge aggregator and aggregated both streaming and started doing podcasting. But even that was a byproduct of failed attempts by ABC Radio and some other major market players before ultimately they all consolidated into one. There's another one out there too, but the point being is technology, disruption, missing the signals. It's the same pattern. And so we need to understand that as we think about AI now, we need to be able to take a step back and identify the patterns that exist in our organizations or the patterns that exist in our everyday lives, the patterns we're seeing when we're talking to clients or interacting with potential clients. What are we hearing versus what are we feeling? Because naming the pattern is part of the solution, right? Because we're trained. We all have a level of expertise that tells us how a certain system is supposed to work, right? We've been doing things for a number of years. We know certain types of clients. We know certain types of workflows. So we know what's supposed to come next. And what's challenging right now is what when what we know is supposed to come next doesn't come next, then our expertise has failed us in being able to understand and read the appropriate signal. Because the landscape is signaling to us. I saw a video where somebody said, it might have been Gary Vee, but somebody said, uh, too many people are focusing on trying to be an AI solution and not a refrigerator, right? What does that mean? And the example they gave was that when Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola is huge, right? Everyone in the world drinks Coca-Cola. Well, for every company that wanted to be the next Coca-Cola, make a secret recipe or compete with Coca-Cola on that level, how many more companies survived, thrived because they decided to make refrigerators because they understood that people needed a better refrigerator to keep their Coca-Cola cold, right? That is the level of thinking when I think about AI that kind of resonates with me because the solution isn't always in the drink, so to speak. Um, the disruption that we're feeling and we're experiencing, it arrives as a signal. It's an opportunity for us. So in every case of the rooms that I sat in, uh, there was an opportunity missed, right? Again, ESPN missed the opportunity to build the infrastructure that now major sports streaming lives on. They could have owned that in so many different ways. ABC Radio missed a way of locking in the audience that they knew they had in a meaningful way because instead of looking at those numbers, instead of understanding that we have a growing audience that we should build product against, that we should better learn to better understand not what it is that they want, but how is the technology redefining what it is that they need? And that's what we're experiencing now. A couple of examples of the right now and how we're seeing errors being made in real time that are tied exactly to this kind of concept. Automation. In the workshop that Business Agility Institute does that is tied to some research that we did called From Capabilities to Constraints, we did some research regarding AI adoption, and AI implementation. And what came out of that research was some early on indicators that AI adoption and implementation tends to be a systems problem instead of a people problem. And we saw a very early case study with Klarna, which I've put some notes here about. But essentially, Klarna went full automation, eliminated a ton of jobs early on, recognized that that was a mistake, and had to backtrack on that decision. And then early this year, they've kind of gone to a hybrid model on that. There was a Harvard Business Review report that talked about, I want to say the number was 95% of AI initiatives had produced no meaningful value to date. Another Harvard Business Review study indicated that 60% of organizations had already reduced their headcount in anticipation of AI, but only 2% had AI actually performing the jobs that they had eliminated positions against. And so researchers call this AI washing, which is using AI as a justification for cutting head count and reducing staff, right? So there's a little bit of a shell game going on right now. And I bring these up to note that some of that angst that I talked about at the very beginning of our talk, some of that angst is falsely kind of being created and generated. Do we know that AI is going to impact jobs? It already has. Do we know it's going to eliminate jobs? It already has. But we also know that there's a little bit of theater going on. So you all are familiar with agile theater, right? Stand-ups that aren't really stand-ups, and retrospectives that don't really lead to any change, and transformations that are ending up in certifications, and nothing really is moving the needle, right? We know from stats that we've gotten from Forrester and Gartner, 55% of employers regret AI-driven layoffs. 1 in 5 AI investments, again, don't deliver any meaningful gain, and 1 in 50 delivers transformational value. In the report that we did with Business Agility Institute, we talk about AI being used as a force multiplier. And the biggest thing that we called out in that report was that the thing that prevents AI from really making an impact has to do with the people in the system, has to do with the constraints that are tied to the systems that are built. And more often than not, the systems that you're working in are reliant on people's capabilities and behaviors well more than the technology that you're trying to force into that system. AI doesn't solve those problems. And so when we think about AI, we have to ask ourselves a pretty meaningful question. We have to ask ourselves, are we letting the technology shape our organizations, or are we deliberately deciding how the organization is going to shape the technology that we're using? And I'm excited because I tend to believe that this very question, this very thing, is where we're starting to see more organizations pause and ask this question. At least maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe that's a hope. So when I talk to younger people in their early professional years, because when I'm doing coaching with young professionals, this comes up a lot, which is, what exactly did I study all these years for, right? Is it worth it? I know in some of my coaching with some adults that are in transition, right? Some subject matter experts, this has come up quite a bit. Subject matter experts are being asked to move on, or being politely given a sabbatical, right? Because some of their work is being outsourced to AI, so to speak. And I noted in an article that I wrote earlier this year about the commodification of human value. And I bring this up to hone in on this point right here, which is your skills are exactly what's needed because of AI. And that should be more closely tied to your human capabilities, your human skills. As we transition into this period, my firm belief is that organizations will come, let me take 2 steps back. Organizations that succeed in this space are going to come to the understanding that it is the human value in the loop, the unique spin and understanding of business perspective, and the long-term knowledge that has been gained from interacting with the customer that is not replaceable, and is the secret sauce, if you will, to making AI produce the types of multiplying effects that we talked about in our report. And so in that report, we frame it as creator to composer. It's an augmentation of understanding our working roles and positions. And so your expertise may be replicated on in one sense from an AI, but what the AI is unable to do is understand how you apply your expertise into a situation. Because unlike AI, you don't need a context protocol to apply your knowledge. Okay, you don't need RAG to remember. You have muscle memory and experience from all of the work that you've done in order to know when to push and when to back off, when it's the right time to experiment, when it's the wrong time to put money into something that has a low potential yield. So a couple of other points here with regards to this. I wanted to juxtapose for you an approach on two case studies that kind of show the value of going this route early on. I gave you the Klarna case study where they automated early and saw limited results and had to continually pivot. Now, again, I don't necessarily think that that is a case study that's doom and gloom. I think you're going to see a lot of organizations do that very thing. But I'd like to think that more organizations will do what IKEA did. And if you're unfamiliar with the IKEA case study, IKEA, as they automated a section of their workflow, they created an internal education program where they upskilled their workers so that they didn't have to lay off 8,500 workers. What they ended up doing was they upskilled those 8,500 workers to focus in on another vertical of the business. And so the result of that was that that area of the business got more attention, more specialized skill, and became a considerable profit generator where it hadn't been before. And I really focus in on IKEA's approach here because I think that opportunity is available to organizations. I think that opportunity is available to like independent contractors, entrepreneurs. I think it's available to all of us if we're willing to accept and understand that this disruption that we're experiencing is not a transition point. It's the signal that we're receiving right now is not a transition point. It is a signal to help us know that fundamentally, like something fundamentally has changed, right? And so when I was talking about the comparison to media, I used those words where something has fundamentally changed. The media landscape changed forever when new media slash digital media, Web 2.0, okay, took hold. And what media was unable to do was control the narrative, so to speak, so that the legacy influences could retain their positions. And that's good for capitalism. It's good for competition, right? That's really no fault of that area of business. But where I think we can learn from that is we don't have to assume that we are going to be part of the group of people that are going to be eliminated or left behind. I think if we can accept the fact that AI has changed things already, then we can learn to read the signals and embrace the new versions of us as individuals, the new versions of us as organizations. And we can do that while still empowering the human and individual sides of us that create value, that create differentiation, that connect with the customer. So just a couple more things here. So maybe we'll have some time for discussion and questions here. A couple takeaways. Learn to read the quiet signal and get uncomfortable. I note here that one of the easiest things you can do right now, if you're not already leaning into AI in a meaningful way, is go find the person that you know that is using AI in either a way that makes you uncomfortable or insecure, and ask them what they're doing. Ask them why they're doing it, and remove some of the fear equation for AI if that exists. I spend a lot of time using a lot of different tools. I also spend a lot of time examining my own workflows and examining my outputs. And I know that the work that I do does not lend itself to the multitude of ways that you will be pitched that AI works on social media or on YouTube, right? But what I have found is that AI has improved all of those areas for me, because in embracing that technology, I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm replaceable, because the way I do things and the way that your organization may do things is very unique. It's very distinct. And so implementation of AI in a meaningful way, in a human-centered way, not only focuses on workflows and the outputs, but it also focuses on amplifying that human element. And examining those workflows and working with AI is one of the easiest ways that you can start thinking along those lines. I'll share with you one anecdote that made me really kind of embrace this idea, which is a know-it-all kind of experience for me. This is years ago when Facebook and social media were just coming up again, kind of invading the media space. And the same guy, me, who could read the tea leaves on the room, so to speak, in the boardroom, I had a younger colleague who was leaning into Facebook. I mean, just leaning into Instagram. And I'm over here thinking she's wasting her time. I'm over here thinking that she's being foolish and that that's just a social platform. She understood it so much better than many of us did at that time. And that's because I fell prey to everything that we talked about earlier. I fell prey to levels of expertise that I thought I had. I fell prey to not reading the signal. And instead of assuming to know, what I should have done was exactly this. I should have went over to her desk. I should have said, talk to me about how you're using this. Talk to me about why you're using this. What is it that you see that I'm not seeing? Additionally, build human capability alongside the tool. So critical. Probably the most important thing I'll say over and over and over. In my piece about commodifying the human experience, my biggest point in that is that authentic human influence in our world is an appreciating value. The more that you can put that human influence into what it is that you're doing on a daily basis, whether that's for your organization, whether that's for your own personal business, the more that is going to differentiate over time. Bar none, I'm 100% sold on this. So building in human capability, authenticity, beyond just a human in the loop who's checking things over and making sure they look right, is critically important for success long term. Because ultimately, I see a bifurcation where you're going to have plenty of shops who don't care about this, who don't care about the human impact on brand, on value, on quality. And when that happens, it will have a huge impact, obviously. But for me, connecting with the customer is always going to be a human thing. Authenticity is always going to be something that you will be able to perceive. So I might not be able to recognize a deep fake today, but I will always be able to feel when a robot made something versus a human influenced the robot that made that something. And I'll leave you with this, just to sum up. When technology disrupts an industry, the temptation is to follow the tool. I encourage you to follow the people for survival. Stay human in this AI native world that we live in, because that's where we are. Accept it to be true today. Don't wait for it to be true tomorrow. And that is the work. So put in the work, and I'm very confident that we all can do well in all of the endeavors that we approach. Thank you.
That was a very good and a very sobering talk. Chris, thank you very much. Folks, we do actually have a good chunk, 12 minutes, 13 minutes of time before we need to part. So let's engage with Chris and ask him questions if you have any. Just keep it brief and to the point. Because I have an itchy trigger finger to say something in my own. Going once, twice. I'll pull the rank here. So I'm actually very driven by what you mentioned about AI and AI theater. I think, and anyone who will log in today on LinkedIn on average will get at least a handful of facetious, sarcastic posts, kind of ridiculing where the AI has taken people and their brains. People think that now AI will, essentially conquer and rule the world. Who in the world won that, right? I mean, like it's almost like beware what you wish for. You got to be in control. You're a human. They're bots. They are there to serve you. The minute we live up to the point, but bots take over and run us, we might as well surrender and go to a different planet, right? I'm a cartoonist, and I have a bunch of stuff out there actually, pointing out to the same. So I really thank you for pointing this out, especially when in the name of HR, people get fired in volumes. Oh, we can have bots do what I think it can go from bad to worse, and for some companies, it actually has materialized in a bad way because you can't just chop people's heads without. In any case, ecosystemically won't work anyway, because if we have too many people that are out of jobs because of AI, we eventually will run into the situation where the people need to feed families, people need to make living. And if we don't keep up with giving jobs as a society, to give them jobs so they can have meaningful lives, we're going to run out of social support and budgets, and then what? Social unrest. So ecosystemically, it makes actually not too much sense to let AI run as a wild goose. So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I kind of stole your thunder a little bit.
No, no, no. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think that I think as we look in retrospect and really try to understand what this moment signals, I think that maybe I am an optimist, right, Gene? Like maybe I am looking at this as too much of a glass half full kind of guy. There's a really interesting book called The Loop, whose author escapes me. He's a reporter that came out very early on when Gen AI was becoming a thing. And His book is a little bit more doom and gloomish. Uh, and his assertion in that book is that in actuality, the people that are defaulting to the systems, so to speak, are are the people that are leading the charge right now. It's hard not to agree with him. I mean, I think this is where the opportunity for us in our organizations and as individuals, as super users, this is one of the bigger opportunities to counter that narrative. And I think with an understanding of the value of human authenticity and a perspective of why that matters, going into your adoption or going into your integration and developing your workflows is how you can make a long-term difference from the abandonment of the human kind of experience. Because I do think that we will see significant contraction in several different markets. And I think we're experiencing disruption on one level right now. And I think what we saw from Anthropic recently with regards to that project that they signed up several of the big players on. I'm losing the name of it, but um, I think that is a flag that hopefully the developers will slow down and make room for us to figure out what the human experience will be moving forward.
This is great. Thank you, folks. We got a few minutes left. If you would like to ask Chris his view on anything else or make a comment, please do so.
And thank you all for your feedback in the chat. I appreciate the
Yeah,
support.
that's very good. Yeah. Kasha, Liang, if you folks want to just chime in.
I don't have a question. I just want to say in a human voice, thank you very much, Chris, for delivering such a wonderful topic.
You're very welcome. I appreciate hearing from you.
Good seeing you, Kasha, too. Been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you. Really insightful and helpful.
Yes, you're very welcome. Let me ask a question to anyone who might be willing to answer it, because Kasha, it sounds like you're somewhere else in the world, maybe not in New York, either that or you might be in New York. But I'm curious, a lot of my perspective on the work that I've done, and we have a little bit of time here, hopefully, to address. The research that I've done touched on many multinational companies. But I am a super user of AI. And when I say I'm a super user, I use AI every single day, and I spend a percentage of my time researching and trying to stay aware of the news. Okay. I'm curious to know if anyone has seen a significant change in the conversation in their work from, let's say, a year ago to now, and whether or not they feel as though it has gotten more pessimistic or more optimistic.
So if I might step in, it's like I've been outside of New York, but I'm already back. So Polish perspective, for last few months I was in Poland. I definitely noticed people speaking. It's not work related, it's just like generally life related. People are using, like, ChatGPT became like a used to be a Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is now suddenly an expert. They just put a quick question, and then suddenly they are becoming an expert because chat said so. But we are also noticing that people start noticing that ChatGPT is coming up with stuff, right? Like, I mean, ChatGPT, we say as representing the whole bunch of AI tools, because it's been like the first one, the most commonly used, but basically it comes to all AI. It's very fast, it's very creative. And at some point you start wondering, who exactly is the customer? Is this, am I the customer, or is the ChatGPT trying to sell to other robots, right? Because like if we are using AI for creating robocalls, right? And then we are having AI to answering robocalls. Where is the human in all this, right? And if somebody wants to tweak specs, somebody wants to tweak something in one robot, right? Suddenly we will have a clash of robots, and who is the beneficiary of those things, right? So yes, it did affect the life globally, but made some things much faster. But people are becoming skeptical. People are becoming a little bit noticing the cracks in the system. But the system is learning fast and developing fast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the things, trends that I'm tracking is, now I live in Germany now, and for those that are not outside of the US, there is a significant push to move away from some of the US-based AI development firms, for two reasons. One is an economic investment reason. I know that there is several firms, one in France that I know of, that is doing some significant work there. Secondarily, though, I think what we're starting to experience is what you're talking about, Kasia, which is we're starting to see a spillover in from AI's influence in different ways, and we know that these models are learning very fast. And so I'm very interested, and all of you are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn and continue the conversation. I'm very interested to continue to learn from everyone about where they've seen benefits and where they're seeing more hesitation in their own personal experience. There's a question here from Black.
Yeah, would you like to send like a virtual message about, you know,
Yeah.
words of wisdom?
Man, I don't know if I don't know if I can. It's a really hard thing for me to provide advice on right now. I think there's value. I think there's always value in everything that's being studied. I think if they're going to study CS, it's applied, and I would say marry your CS studies with human studies. Marry your CS studies with an understanding of humanities, an understanding of ethics, an understanding of the personal dynamic, because where prompt engineering and understanding how to talk to the AI was a significant thing a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, I see the ability to marry critical thinking and human understanding with programmatic expertise as being the next layer of meaningful impact in that field.
Thank you very much for this one. Thank you for this insight, Lack. Hopefully you can pass this on to your acquaintance. Folks, at this juncture, I would like to wrap this up so that we actually have a clean slate, ending on a good note, on a positive note. I would like to thank Christopher very genuinely for coming out and doing this at this late hour for him. He is in Germany. I also encourage you to reach out to Chris directly online. And LinkedIn would be the preference, I'm sure, and connect. And if you have any additional questions, just reach out to him directly. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure he will be very approachable. Chris, personal thank you to you.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And thanks God it's Friday for all of us. Let's head into the weekend. You sooner than us here in the U.S. or the Americas. But in any case, let's stay in touch. Thank you very much, and everyone, thank you for keeping the community, the global community, growing and staying busy. See you all. Cheers.